Artful Living in Ohio is presented by Sharon Weiss Galleries in Columbus's Short North and by Vision Antiques and Estate Sales and Vasari Appraisal Services. Vision and Vasari on West 5th Avenue in Columbus.
Hi, I'm Lisa Godfrey. Today, we're at the home of Lisa and Jeff Morton on Neal Avenue.
Hi, Lisa.
Hi, Lisa and
Welcome
Jeff.
to our home.
Thank you.
It's so nice to see you.
Thank you, Lisa and Jeff, for having us into your home. If you would, please give us a little background about your home and when you purchased it, and perhaps a little bit about the original owners.
Okay. We moved here in 2004, right? And we have been here almost 20 years now. The house was built in 1895. And the first owner was a guy named Cyrus Woodbury, and he lived here for almost 25 years as well. And after that, it had a series of owners, one of which was Battelle. They actually bought the property in the 60s and stabilized it then. And then a family lived here for about 25 years before we bought it from them in 2004.
It's beautiful. And I think one of the transitions was a boarding house, a rooming house.
In the 1930s, this was actually a home for widows. It was called the Neal Avenue
House for Guests or something like that.
That's sweet.
Yeah, it was advertised as furnished rooms, widows welcome. So it was kind of in a state of decline then in this neighborhood because people had started moving to the suburbs like Grandview and Upper Arlington. But it was still a respectable neighborhood, and there were widows and rooms for rent and things like that. And this house was part of that tradition. We didn't have any furniture or things that were really the right scale for this house with the high ceilings. So when we moved here, we had to start to look for furnishings and artwork that complemented the scale and the size of the rooms. Collecting antique furniture and artwork like this sculpture by Ohio State professor Irwin Fry are examples of some of the pieces that we chose to sort of honor the history of the house with both true art as well as furniture and home goods that are artistic.
Okay, Lisa and Jeff, if you would please take us into your parlor and we'll look at the rest of the house.
Okay.
Lisa, you have so many collections. Tell me about, how did you start collecting?
Well, I think Jeff and I both grew up in homes where there were treasured possessions and antiques and things like that that had been passed down through our family. So kind of we were collectors from the start. Okay. But my first love was china and antique furniture. And so that's really how we started becoming collectors. And when we moved into this house, we realized that art was something that would add to the mix of that. And so we decided to add art as well.
I know you have a massive art collection and you love local artists. And would you please point out a couple of your favorite paintings in this room?
Sure. The piece above the fireplace is really one of my very favorite ones. It's by artist Nora Daniel, and it is just an exquisite painting of the Julie Heller Gallery in Provincetown, Mass. And I just think it's beautiful because of how many paintings there are within the painting itself. A couple other pieces in this room that I love are two historic paintings. There's a piece by Diane Powell, who is a Ohio artist, a graduate of OSU, who's no longer living. And then also Roman Johnson, which is a very early piece, a still life that I think is just lovely. And then beneath that is local artist Suzanne Dotson. And I love how those pieces play together, even though they have been painted, decades apart. I still feel like they play well together and really enhance our space.
They do. Jeff, please tell us a little bit about your family history and some of your family treasures here.
Certainly, absolutely. In this area here, we actually have two. One that I'd like to point out first is this blue and white plate of the chapel at West Point. What makes my life pretty interesting is the fact I was born into a military family and was actually born at West Point. I've lived in Europe, I've lived throughout North America, and my father served in Korea and Vietnam. And one of the items that he brought back from Vietnam is a very nice desk that he purchased in Saigon about 1970. He actually got it as a gift from my grandmother. And then when she passed, I had to have it.
Let's go on into the dining room. And Lisa, if you would please tell us what the rooms were originally, how you use them now.
So when the house was built in 1895, the Victorian customs and culture would have made this room a formal parlor where the owners of the house would have received guests. And because of sort of the division of what was public and what was private space, the pocket doors that separate these two rooms would have separated this into a family parlor. We chose to use it as our dining room just because we felt like it flowed better, and because the room that was used as the dining room, we chose to make into a library.
Okay.
So that's a little bit of a history of how the house was built and then how we're using it differently in a more modern era.
Lisa, my grandfather served in the Army. He was a graduate of West Point class of 23. And shortly after that, you have to declare basically what your specialty in the military is going to be. And he chose coastal artillery. And they immediately put him and my father and my grandmother on a boat. And in this photo album we have here, we can actually trace the trip through the Panama Canal. There's one of the locks through the canal. My grandmother, and that's my grandfather. And that's my father and grandmother on the beach in what looks like Oahu. When they got to the Philippines, it gets very, very hot during the summer. So they actually took a boat and a vacation to China. And one of the things that my grandmother found in a shop was this beautiful china. Actually, this is just one set of 3. My 2 other brothers have an equal set, although Lisa has added a few pieces to this over the years. So this is incredible china that was purchased probably at a very minimum expense in Peking during the early 1930s.
Lovely. Lisa, talk to us a little bit about how you brought all your collections together, how you incorporated when you were decorating your home.
Okay, I guess I would start by saying that I use things like the China collection that is Jeff's family's as a jumping off point. And so in this room, I have expanded on that collection and used it sort of as an Asian or Chinese theme for some of the other pieces.
Lisa, these photographs are in such a prominent place in your home. Tell us about these photographs and the artist.
The artist is a photographer named Jason Wilson. And right around the time that we bought the home, Jason was starting out as a professional photographer. And so these were some large scale pieces that we purchased of scenes of Columbus. And we love them, and we thought that they were a great way to fill this wall, and that they went with sort of the black and white theme that was in the kitchen that we were starting up.
And I loved how they're displayed with Rick Borg.
Yes,
completely opposite.
Exactly.
Style.
We love the Rick Borg alligator piece, and that's a theme that Rick Borg goes to often that we wanted to incorporate into our house. And we were looking for a long, skinny place to put it, and that's where it ended up.
Lisa, we're in the library now. Tell us a little bit about what this room was originally and about the transition of the room.
So this room originally was the dining room of the house. And we know that because there's this beautiful built-in china cabinet that has a pass-through into the butler's pantry. So we know that that's how this room was originally used. It has a beautiful coffered ceiling that our architects think was added in the early 1900s as a way to make the house more modern, because craftsman style was coming into being and the house was very Queen Anne. So they changed the ceiling with the coffered ceiling and the little tulip lights, and the chandelier is an original to the house as well. We decided to use this room as more of a family room and made it into a library. And the built-in bookcases are a great way for us to showcase all of our treasures, books and art and china and family memorabilia.
One thing I didn't notice before is the little portrait.
It's an antique painting that I absolutely love. And that little niche there with the painting and some of my favorite art books, just a really delightful little nook. The painting was purchased at Sharon Weiss Gallery, and it was something that I had seen and admired for many years.
Hey, Lisa, I know that you have a background in curating art, but tell us a little bit of background on your Ohio State Faculty Club.
Oh, I just recently retired as the art coordinator and curator for the Faculty Club exhibits, which is an art job that I held for 10 years. So that is probably the place that I fine-tuned my skills in hanging and curating art. But it's something that I had done a long time in our home, as you can see.
Lisa, your home is an art gallery, and we're here in the Stair halls. Just start telling us about some of your favorite pieces.
Well, there's a couple pieces that are near and dear to my heart. There are two portraits that were created by my great uncle. He was a taxidermist as well as an artist. And so the portrait of this angelic girl and the portrait of my great great grandfather were done by my great uncle. But the star of the show is undoubtedly this beautiful, almost life-size portrait of a little girl that we call the Goldman Girl. Her grandfather was the first Jewish settler in Butler County and was the founder of Goldman's department store in Middletown, Ohio, which is where my father grew up and was born.
You told me one time you feel as if you're caretakers of this home, and you're also caretakers of the artwork. There's a little bit of history on that frame and your promise to keep it all together.
Yes, this is true. The woman who owned the antique shop said that a number of people had come into the store and wanted to buy this piece, and most of them were decorators, and they told her that they were going to take the art out and throw it away and make this into a mirror, which I agree would be stunning. However, the owner was very particular and decided she was not going to sell it unless she knew the person was going to keep it as art. So we were lucky to be able to show her pictures of our home and tell her that we wanted it to be the centerpiece of our Victorian era stair hall. One of the other features of the house that we believe is original, and the architects feel that it was probably added in the early 1900s, is this tin wainscoting. And it was obviously more of a craftsman style than the original house, which is Queen Anne. But it was probably an attempt to sort of modify the house and modernize it and make it up to date with the trends in decorating in the early 1900s. And we decided to keep it.
Okay, we're now in the owner's suite. And Jeff, if you would tell us about how you transitioned this into the owner's suite.
Certainly, Lisa. This is the master bedroom, and it probably always was when the original owners had it. This would have been the main bedroom. Interesting enough, the fireplaces that are in this room and the front one were run by coal, and the coal was not actually set afire down in here. It was actually set on fire down in the first floor fireplaces, and then brought up here in a metal kettle of some sort, and just placed in there so you could sleep in here overnight.
Lisa, please tell us about these amazing pieces in the corner of the master bedroom.
Well, there are several pieces by Malcolm Barraway, who is one of my favorite artists. The top two pieces are Malcolm's pieces. And then there's a lovely piece that is an interior of painter Rick Akers' house that was painted by Columbus artist Karen LaValle. And it's just exquisite. And then there's another piece that is by a German artist that I bought at Brant Roberts Gallery. And that piece was painted in the early 1900s prior to Hitler taking control of Germany. And we know that because once Hitler took control, he commandeered all of the artists and forced them to create propaganda.
Lisa, please tell us about these poo dogs that are guarding your lovely Emerson Burkhart.
So this room, we jumped off of this green original tile, and we painted the walls dill pickle, and then I started adding some green Majolica pieces. And the foo dogs were a collection that I accumulated over time. Didn't find them all at once, but they were really fun and whimsical, and I loved them. And so now they're on top of our mantle in our bedroom.
And they are standing guard of?
This is an Emerson Burkhart painting that I purchased at auction. And amazingly, Emerson Burkhart, in the last year of his life, traveled to Northern Ontario, to Manitoulin Island, which is where we have our summer home. When I looked at this piece and found out that it was a painting of the chief's house at the Wikwemkong First Nation on Manitoulin Island, I was in love. I had to have it. One of the things we loved about this house on Neal Avenue was that it had not been broken up into apartments. And so the original floor plan was here, and we decided to pretty much stay with that and keep it. So we have additional bedrooms on the second floor. We did add a bathroom and a laundry room to modernize it a little bit, but this is really the layout of what this Victorian house would have been like. The third floor would have been where the help lived, and we made it into our family room. So now we're on the third floor, and when we bought the house, this was basically storage space. It was pretty much unfinished, and we converted it into a family room and just sort of a flex space that allowed us to have a more comfortable place to be. And the beautiful heart pine floors are original to the house, and we had those refinished, and we added a bathroom, and really that's about it. So when the house was built, there wasn't anything back here but a gravel parking lot and weeds. And so we knew from our research that there had been a structure of this size and shape, and we think that the carriage house was here on the 1922 insurance maps. It shows that there was a structure in this space. So we decided that we wanted to build a carriage house, and this is what we built. And it frames nicely the back of the house and creates a really beautiful backyard.
Lisa, we're now in your lovely carriage house. Please tell us about the artwork and how you use this.
Well, this is just a guest space. At one point, we used it as a business and ran a guest house like an Airbnb here, but now we just use it for our own enjoyment. And as my artist friend, Fred Fochman, told me, it's the art annex now. So there are a couple notable pieces out here that I would love to share with you.
Okay.
We have a piece that is very much indicative of our experience over the last few years. It's called Masking 2020 by Columbus artist Tiffany Lawson. And Tiffany made this amazing piece. It's a collage, and it just so captured the experience of all of us wearing masks. So it really spoke to me and the time that we were living in. Another piece that I love that also very much spoke to me about the time we're living in is this piece by Brendan Spivey. And this piece is called Through the Fire. And he told me a story about this piece. It was something that he painted after the death of Andre Hill, who was killed by Columbus police. This piece, Through the Fire, was something that he came home and painted after he learned about the news of Andre Hill's death.
You can see the emotion coming through in this piece of artwork.
You really can. And when he talked about it, he said it was one of the first times in his life that he picked up the brush and the painting just happened. He said it just came out of him and he couldn't control it. It just happened, and it just was an outflow of emotion through his arm and the paintbrush.
Jeff and Lisa, thank you so much for allowing us to come into your gorgeous home. And I admire the way you've put all your collections together. You did an outstanding job. It's been a pleasure.
It's been our pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for coming, Lisa. Great to see you.
You too.
Artful Living in Ohio is presented by Sharon Weiss Galleries in Columbus's Short North and by Vision Antiques and Estate Sales and Vasari Appraisal Services. Vision and Vasari on West 5th Avenue in Columbus.